front of you see my 10-gallon quarantine tank, and located in the quarantine tank are the most active and front and center fish are called Geophagus Altifrons, and that is what this video will be about. I just want to do a quick species profile, one, to increase my knowledge of the fish that I have, but two, so others may be able to benefit. Also in the tank, you will see a piece of driftwood sitting on the substrate direct center. What you may or may not be able to make out is located just in the shadow in the front of that is a king tiger pleco, or an L066, and I will do also a quick species spotlight on the king tiger pleco. But let's discuss just a bit about the Geophagus Altifrons and some quick facts as we watch the tank. Again, I'll note the tank is not set up particularly for any type of fish. This is just a quarantine tank, small 10-gallon quarantine tank, where these geos and the pleco will exist for quite a few weeks. They'll undergo several treatments. Like many fish keepers, my quarantine treatments last several weeks and will consist of general cure, ICX, and depending on if I feel like that is needed, it may have to have 1, 2, or even 3 rounds sometimes. If the fish are doing well and adjusting and don't show any signs of ick or outward signs of outward parasites or internal parasites, I'll probably just keep that to 1 or 2 treatments of both and just observe. But they will stay 2, 3, 4 weeks depending on how I feel and how they're acting. The tank is not set up for them. Like I say, you should notice the substrate in this tank is just general substrate of gravel. Geophagus by nature are sand sifters. They like to just graze and pick through sand for their food, and this is not the optimal environment of them. I'm contemplating on putting them in a bare bottom tank, which is good general quarantine tank or hospital tank type of setup, but I just like to have somewhat of a more natural setup if I can. However, I did not have a sand tank for them to go into, and I personally do not like sand. If you've ever used sand in a tank, some people love it. It does look nice. However, the problem with sand is no matter how hard you try, you scratch your tank. It is very abrasive. Even the best sand in the world. There have people come up, oh no, the cichlid sands. Nope. Nope. I will speak from experience. I have a 125 that has sand in it, and I did everything in my power not to scratch the front pane when cleaning that glass, and I have still found where remarkably somehow I have got scratches on that tank. And once you have a fish tank with scratches, you cannot unsee them. I promise you, you will see them. Anyway, let's get into some facts that I have downloaded from the interweb to make me sound like I know what I'm talking about on my new favorites, these Geophagus, which they will be going after their quarantine. They will be going into a 60-gallon aquarium, which I will pull the gravel substrate out and replace with some sort of sand. I really hate to do it, but it is going to be awesome. These guys are just such pretty fish. The Geophagus Altifrons, let's get into it. So the Geophagus Altifrons, they're a South American cichlid. They're semi-aggressive, somewhat of a passive for cichlids. You can have them in a community aquarium. You should be wary what type of fish you put them with, as these guys, as they grow, will and can eat smaller fish, but they generally do well in community aquariums. As you see, I have a group of 4, and that is because if you buy them alone, they do prefer to be in groups, but if you just say you bought 2 of them, and in the event there is a little aggression between the 2, usually that aggression will be from one fish towards another, and there will be no way to spread that out. If you do buy a group, recommend 3, at least 3, to help spread that aggression out if there is any. Again, as far as cichlids goes, these guys are way on the peaceful scale as far as cichlids go. However, they are cichlids. So minimum tank size for these guys is a 55-gallon aquarium. However, I'm not really so sure that I would recommend keeping them in a 55-gallon aquarium, as they do get to be about 12 inches long, and that is quite big when you look at the depth of a 55 aquarium. I would recommend no smaller than a 75 personally, and a 125 if you can swing it, especially if you have a group. If you only have one as a centerpiece fish, you may be able to pull off a 75, but when they start to get larger, then they'll be okay. There'll be could be issues. So I'd recommend, particularly like I have 4 of them, as mine grow, they will go from a 60-gallon aquarium, and then they have the ability to step up to a 75 or a 125, or however they should stay in that 60-gallon aquarium for some time. Anyway, I digress. They do well in small and community aquariums. You just sort of have to keep an eye on them. The diet, they are omnivores, so they eat pretty much anything you put on the tank. So you want to spread their diet out, though, amongst protein sources and vegetarian sources if possible. And in this tank right now, most of the food I have floats on top. They will eat off top and do enjoy eating bloodworms or things of that nature, freeze-dried shrimp off the top. But in general, these fish are sand sifters and eat off the bottom, and they'll graze all day turning over the substrate looking for food. So in their long-term home, that's what I would recommend that they would have. The temperature of the water that you keep them in, and they're pretty happy in a wide temperature range. They're happy from 77 to 86 degrees. And the pH, since there are South American cichlids, they like it more on the acidic side, anywhere as low as 5, pH 5 up to 7. Now, these fish, along with most fish people get in fish stores, are captive bred and not wild caught. And if you have a fish that is a wild caught fish, this pH may be an issue for most fish keepers, as keeping a fish tank with a pH down as low as 5 or 6, that's quite on the acidic scale, and most fish keepers may have to make some modifications to the water. If you are in an alkaline environment, such as I am, you can lower the pH using peat moss. There are pH ups and downs, and I don't really recommend messing with the pH too much, because then you get into always chasing pH. You're better to have a pH and keep it stable, and the fish will adjust. But for the most part, most of the fish are captive bred and have already adjusted to generally of the pH of most fish keepers. So, for instance, these fish, they say you would like them to have a 5 to 7 pH. Well, my pH here, I'm running an 8, 8.2 pH. Very alkaline pH. So, and I haven't seen any issues with these fish. Matter of fact, when I brought them home, I temperature acclimated them, and then I plopped and dropped, and they showed absolutely no signs of distress. They've been just like you're seeing in the video the whole time. So anyway, let's back into this. So again, these cichlids do get large. They get up to about 12 inches. So that, of course, mileage on that may vary. But these guys are gorgeous. Not only do they have great personalities, and as you can see from the video, they're swimming around, but they are gorgeous. The bodies are generally a gray or silverish, with some banding of gold and orange and a sheen of iridescent blue, and not only in their scales, but also on their fins. And in their face, they get this translucent blue as they get older, and they just get absolutely stunning. They're a great centerpiece fish to have. But they are generally hard to sec, so, they're just super similar looking. The really general way most people do it is size. Males are quite a bit bigger than the females. But other than that, they're difficult to sec. So you may get a group, like I have this group of 4, and you may get a group that decide they're going to breed. Well, if they breed, how do they breed? Let's talk about that. So these fish are egg layers, but they are mouth brooders. So what happens is that the female will find a spot in the tank that's flat, use a clean area. It could be on a flat rock or piece of driftwood. After all, these are cichlids. They easily breed, but The female will lay the eggs, and the male will come behind her and fertilize the eggs. And then once the eggs are fertilized, the female will pick up the eggs into her mouth and hold them in her mouth until they are ready to release. So that can be, after, let's say she lays the eggs and the fertilize in 1 to 24 hours, she'll put them in her mouth, and she will hold them for 1 to 2 weeks and will not eat in most cases. Once they are ready to be released, the female will release them, but however, the mouth brooding is not fully over at that time. Geophagus are good parents. They do look after their young, so both parents will look after the small ones, but as needed, the female will continue to at times pick them up and protect them and hold them in her mouth until they are free swimming and strong enough to be out. And at that time, if you do have that, you can feed them just like any other fish, brine shrimp, small crushed up flake food, or fry food. So, but in general, I am super excited about these guys. I cannot wait for them to be out of their quarantine tank. However, I have just begun the quarantine process. So I'm on day 3, I believe, of quarantine for these little guys, and I will start the treatment process for the parasites with, and also ICX with IC. The temperature of this tank right now is sitting at 78 degrees, and in several days I've noticed no problems, no signs of anything. But do not ever, just aside, don't ever take what you notice in just a few days as there are no problems and plop fish into your main tank. That is how you get your entire tank sick, and it's how entire tanks can die. I would always recommend, if you have the access to a quarantine tank, to use that quarantine tank if at all possible. So anyway, that will conclude the discussion of the Geophagus Altifrons. I'm going to also do a species spotlight of the L066 pleco, the king tiger pleco, in another video, and I may even use this same clip. It depends on if this works out. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it.